what kind of water should I drink? Because obviously, if this is a problem of degraded, polluted water, if this is fundamentally a message from water that we have come to a fork in the road and we either are going to degrade or we're going to start a new culture based on purified water, it would be a good idea to start with purified water or proper water. That's better than purified. Scratch the purified. So what do I mean by that? And what I would say is that if you go back 100, 500, not 100, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and you describe the characteristics of water, here's what I would say. Number one, there's no stuff in the water. What do I mean by stuff? I mean aluminum and chlorine and chloramines and fluoride and glyphosate and birth control pills and Prozac and microplastics and a whole long list of about 100 other things. And I can guarantee that essentially everybody out there, except if you have access to a pristine spring, which maybe even doesn't exist anymore, all of you are drinking water with basically many, if not most of those things in it. There may be some exceptions, people with wells and all, but everybody drinking water from a municipal tap has most of those, if not all those things in it. So you cannot have stuff in the water and have it be healthy water. So that's step one. So again, all the water that humans used to drink bubbled up from the earth, from springs, or it ran over rocks in streams. And in doing so, it picked up all the minerals. And so not only did we have water with no stuff in it, we had water that had the entire complement of minerals, not just one or two, or I put some calcium or magnesium or something in the water, and now it has minerals. It had all the minerals of the earth in the water. And probably the earth got it from the sea, so it had all the minerals from the sea eventually show up in the water. That's step two. Step three is all of this water was moving, and in particularly in patterns that we now call vortices. And in doing so, it picked up oxygen, and so we had moving, structured, coherent, oxygenated water. That's what people drank. And now when we examine the sort of sacred waters like Lourdes and other places, we always find that they're oxygenated and structured, and that's essentially the definition of one of the aspects of healthy water. That's step three. You cannot have water that has no movement, that's dead in pipes, and that has almost no oxygen in them. That is not healthy water, and that's the water all of us are drinking. And the final step is, which is maybe getting even more esoteric, is this water that bubbled up from the earth or over streams was exposed to the electromagnetic fields, the energy, because we know that the function of water is to absorb all the energy of the cosmos and the earth, period. That's what it's doing in nature. That's what it's doing in our bodies. So this water in the streams was exposed to the frogs and the crickets and the birds and the songs of nature and the earth fields and on and on and on. So in a sense, I like to describe it as the water was sung to, and that elevated the energy level of the water, and that is the 4 steps of assessing healthy water. Now, as I said, all the water in your tap has none of those 4 steps. It has stuff in it. It doesn't have the right minerals in it. It has very low, if any, oxygen in it. It is not structured or coherent, and it was sung to by mechanical pipes and all kinds of negative electromagnetic influences, and even not the birds, because apparently 90% of the birds, and I don't know what percent of the insects, are not even here anymore. So that's the problem. Now, a lot of people over the last months since the cancer book have sent me water to try. I've investigated them. I'm not a water scientist, but I've tried to learn what I can about how to evaluate this. And at the end of the day, my conclusion is there's only one water that I know of that fulfills all these four aspects, and that's a water made by a company called OphoraWater.com. That's OPHORA water.com. And what they do is first nano purify the water, which means they're the only company that I've seen that can prove to me that they have no stuff in there, including plastics, including microplastics. And I'm now aware of just how difficult it is to get those things out of the water. I didn't know this 6 months ago. And they can demonstrate that they have gotten those things out of the water. And that's also the reason why they have never and would never put their water in plastic bottles. There is no justification in my mind for putting water in plastic bottles, with one possible exception, and that is there are deuterium depleted waters, and I'm not going to talk about deuterium depletion because it probably is relevant to this discussion, but it would take us too far afield, and I wrote about that in the cancer book. So there are good deuterium depleted waters that do come in plastic bottles that you could use in order to lower your deuterium levels, along with doing a test to find out what your deuterium levels are. So I can see that rationale, and that is a reason why you could use water in plastic bottles as a temporary measure. Otherwise, if our goal is to get the stuff out of the water, it has to be nano purified, it has to be proven that it is, and it has to be in glass bottles. Number two, you have to add all the minerals from the sea and the earth back into it, and that's what Ophora does. Number three, you have to put it through vortices, and I don't exactly understand the level of vortexes and crystals that they use, but I'm sure that that's what they're doing. And the reason that I know that is because by doing that, you increase the oxygen level in the water to 40 parts per million, which is much higher than any other water there is, at least that I know of. Now, when I first heard about this, I thought, well, we all know that you don't get oxygen in your blood through drinking water. I mean, that's kind of seemingly ridiculous. We get oxygen in our blood from the air that we breathe. And after all, this is partly an oxygen problem. So what difference does it make of the oxygen level in the water? The other thing I would say is the people at Ophora have also convinced me that as important as the water you drink is the water that you bathe in or shower in or vaporize into your house. And so to get into the level of proof, they have demonstrated to me with data, much to my surprise, and even though if I can't explain it necessarily, that drinking Ophora water with its increased oxygen level and bathing in Ophora water will actually increase the PO2 level in your blood and tissues. How that is, I would admit, a mystery, but that it is has been demonstrated. Now, the other way that you can demonstrate this is you can measure the lactic acid levels in the tissues. And I talked about lactic acid in my heart book. Because the lower the lactic acid level, that is a certain evidence that the higher the oxygen level, because the reason you make lactic acid is because your oxygenation goes down and then you switch your metabolism and then you make this lactic acid. So they've also conclusively demonstrated with studies that drinking and bathing in Ophora water will lower your lactic acid levels in your blood and in your tissues. And they can provide you with the studies if you want. Here's another possible explanation for that. Because again, much to my surprise, they provided me with evidence that if you water a plant with Ophora water, it will grow better and be healthier than plants watered with tap water. And one of the reasons they surmised that this would be is because the Ophora water has a higher level of oxygen in the water. And at first, when I heard that, you shake your head and you think, wait a minute, plants don't even use oxygen. This can't be relevant. This can't even be true. But on the other hand, you see the plants. They're healthier, they're more robust. Maybe it's just the structure of the water. We know that watering plants with structured water increases their health and their vitality. So at first, I couldn't believe that somehow watering plants with higher oxygen levels would possibly create a healthier plant. But then they presented me with evidence that it may not be that the plants actually use the oxygen, but certainly the microbes in the soil do. I mean, we know that if you increase the oxygen level to microbes, you will get a whole different population. And since the microbes, essentially, they excrete or secrete the entire nourishment of the plant, that could be a very plausible explanation of how watering the soil, so you're not actually watering the plant, I mean, you're watering the plant, but you're watering the soil, that changes the microbial population to a more robust and healthy variety, and that creates healthier and more robust plants. So there are other reasons why increasing oxygenation is good, and as I proposed in my hypothesis for what the problem is here, a lot of it has to do with somebody did something to the oxygen in the air and therefore in our blood. And what we're seeing is a hypoxic event. So it would make sense that if anything we could do, whether it's through changing our gut flora or the direct absorption of oxygen, I'm not sure, and I don't think anybody is, but it could have the exact same effect as oxygenating and therefore changing our own microbial population, which could then make us healthier and specifically even have more oxygen. So that's step 3. And then step 4 is essentially they sing to their water. They sing to it by a whole variety of techniques, which I'm not even sure of the details, but through music, through Brahms, through Beethoven, and I'm not sure of the details, but I know that that's a very big part of their whole procedure and operation is you have to expose this water, which is an open book for all the electromagnetic fields and all the energies of the universe. You have to make it as coherent as possible, and so that's step 4. Then, as I said, it's bottled in glass bottles for people to drink, or you can get a home system which doesn't have the same oxygen levels, but that's another way to do this.